Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Property Zone Live again. My name is Sean Lee, and today's topic, as you can see, is gonna be quite popular as well as a quite widely discussed topic. As you know, we are in the midst of a pandemic. Hopefully, later it will turn to an endemic. But during this time, a lot of people are still debating: is it a good time? Do they have compelling reason to buy a property at this moment of time? So sometimes when we make a decision, it's always the devil and angel, uh, talking different things to our mind at the same time. So maybe what I do today, I will actually share some of the why and why not, why you should buy or why you should not buy during pandemic to buy a property. Okay. So without further ado, I actually have prepared some slide, and I'm just gonna bring out very quickly. Okay. I hope everyone can see my screen. Okay. Okay, let me just maximize it for easier reference. Okay, topic today. Shall you buy a property during pandemic? Let me just go through the yes and no thing. Okay, well, some of the reason people think that now probably is not a good time to buy is because there are a lot of uncertainties. Okay, uncertainties about where are we moving from now. Uncertainties about how economy or business activity is going to fare. And in fact, as many of us are witnessing now, we actually have another political uncertainties. The things has reached a new height since last week. Okay, you can see the parliament demonstration and all. So some people say compared to the rest of the countries, Malaysia actually have another uncertainties that add on to the COVID-19 crisis. So therefore, it's not a good time to buy. Okay. The second thing, as what have people have seen, is the household saving, which is reflected in many ways, is the EPF. There's actually a high withdrawal of EPF during this 1.5 years period. And with this high withdrawal EPF, it results in a low balance in their EPF account 1 and account 2. So when people say that if people or household already need to tap on their future saving, which is meant for retirement and aid the future purposes, in order to capture, in order to handle the daily expenses nowadays, how can we convince ourselves to buy a property now? Okay, this is the second reason. No, okay, shouldn't buy. Third, there's also a drop in average salary and affordability, which I will show you in more details later. You can see in the figures as well. So affordability has dropped, therefore shouldn't buy a property. That's probably what one side people have been. No, of course, if you probably in a challenging time now, working to cope with the daily expenses now, probably buying property is the last thing in your mind now. But for those who actually have the capacity and probably their income are not directly impacted by COVID-19 or they have substantial saving, but the thought of whether to buy a property during pandemic to hedge against the inflation that we brought along with the quantitative easing measurement. So this is the yes factor that people are looking at. Okay, the first that probably prompt people to start consider whether to buy a property now is they are looking at a lot of quantitative easing measurement. Of course, by now, many of you have actually have a basic understanding, fundamental understanding of what is quantitative easing measurement. I probably wouldn't go in details, but in short, these are the three scenarios. Okay, central government around the world would actually reduce the interest to super low era. For example, US is 0.25%. Malaysia is currently at 1.75% for their OPR, overnight policy rate. So low interest rate, one of the indication, one of the result by quantitative easing. Second thing, central bank around the world start buying mid and long-term bond from the market. So the act of buying mid and long-term bond, that means the physical currency or the cash has to be pumped to the market. So when you buy something, you actually get the bond in return, and the central bank give out the currency. Okay, normally it's in the digital currency, like in the digital form. All right, but currency is flowing out to the market. So in other words, they are injecting liquidity into the market through banking system. Third, printing tons of money. Everybody knows. Okay, I'll show the famous chart. Everybody is very familiar with. Okay, and I'll also go into what does super low interest mean. Okay, other than just mere lower installment. If you buy a property now, or you actually already serving your mortgage loan, what the super low interest rate, which is the area we are in now, meant for you. Of course, third is the escalating building material cost. And we have seen all the building material cost has gone up tremendously since last year. It has come down a little bit from the peak, but compared to pre-pandemic level, almost all the building material cost has gone up substantially compared to last year. Okay. Now, I'm going to go into the slide and elaborate a bit more on why you should not buy a property now. Of course, the COVID cases has breached 1,600,000 last week, and also the active cases is actually nearing to 200,000. This creates a lot of negative sentiment. Every time you look up, read through the newspaper, you browse through your phone using the Facebook, okay, this negative sentiment sits in. And as our finance minister has mentioned, actually there are quite a substantial EPF contributor have only less than 1,000 in account one, especially after the withdrawal announced by the government in the policy to fight COVID-19. Third, Malaysian mean salary and wages dipped 9% last year. First decline since 2010. Last year is 2020. So means since we actually encountered the first decline in salary, all right, that's 2020. This is by the News of China's New Asia, and some of us predict that 2021 might not be even better. We may see the further declines. Okay, all these perhaps painted actually a very bearish negative picture is like why people should hold back making a big scary enough. Okay, but I want to bring an example, okay, to a comparison, although it's not the same country, it's a country in Southern America, all right. But I just want to draw a comparison in terms of sometimes the commodities or property prices doesn't really care about the drop in income level, doesn't really care about the drop in the balance in their EPF. Why? Because sometimes what you see is the country would have the property or commodity prices actually have their own way of moving forward. Okay, just because the average income or the saving level of the citizen is going lower doesn't mean that the commodity or fixed asset or property prices will accordingly. Okay, I give you one example. Okay, this is a country I think many people are familiar with, Venezuela. Okay, they're famous for two things. Of course, one is the Miss World. The participant of Venezuela enter and become Miss World is very high. Okay, but the second thing is also their high inflation. If you see the chart that is reflected in Google, okay, starting from 2020, 2021, and projection for 2022, they are all 4 digits. They are all 4 digits. Of course, many of the people are living in a very dire, in a very challenging condition now, and also at least in the foreseeable futures. But the thing is, it didn't even stop the basic necessity. For example, the eggs. When you talk about food, The most basic food they give us the full nutrition, the first thing probably cross our mind is the egg. Can you imagine the eggs is gonna cost about 1 month's salary? Okay, so for some people thinking is if your average salary is so low, the goods and products that is available to you, especially the necessary one, their price should come down accordingly. But sometimes in reality, it just doesn't happen in that way. So what kind of situation or what kind of living condition you will be in if you have to spend 1 month's salary to buy the eggs for your family? This is ridiculous. And in case you wonder, how much is 1 month's salary, average salary in Venezuela? You see it right, actually. An average monthly salary in Venezuela is only around 25 US dollar. So if you do the conversion, it's less than 120 ringgit a month. All right. To us, it's staggering low. For them, it's just natural at this point. So it doesn't make any sense for anybody to spend 1 month's salary just to buy eggs. But in reality, what we are saying that commodities, sometimes goods and services, even property have their own way of moving forwards that is breaking away from the income level as well as the saving level of their own citizen. Okay. The other things to ponder upon is actually Malaysia is the second most expensive country to own a car. We have so many countries in the world. Yet, no, ranking the second most expensive country to own a car, but we still see many luxury cars around. BMW, Mercedes, Audi, Wellfire, Alphard, you name it, you will get to see. Okay. Now, a snapshot of quantitative easing. This is actually a money printing machine. But as you know, we enter a new era. Nowadays, the Federal Reserve Government, which is the central bank of US, no longer using this old method to print out the physical money. Actually, what they do is they've created digital currency. Okay. So quantitative easing measure, I told you just now, I showed you just now, three things happen. The first is actually low interest rate. Second is printing tons of money. All right. So low interest rate, US has dropped, okay, substantially interest rate. They will call Fed fund rate, okay, to as low as 0.25%. Okay, historical low level again. And the same thing happened to Malaysia. Malaysia interest rate is actually illustrated by OPR, overnight policy rate, is also dropped substantially from 3% all the way to 1.75%. And as you know, the next announcement, whether the interest rate going to come down, maintain, or even increase, is going to be the 9th of September next month. Okay, 9th of September. Now, with this super low interest rate era we are in now in Malaysia, so I'm just going to talk about mortgage rate. I know there are so many interest rate. There have car interest rate, we have credit card interest rate. But since it's a property, I'm just going to zoom in directly to mortgage rate. So when I say effective mortgage rate, that is whether you use the BRR minus or you use the BR and add on to the spread. So I'm just talking about effective mortgage rates. There's the ultimate rate that you're paying for your mortgage. Just not too long ago, our effective mortgage rate pre-COVID, before COVID, was at 4.25%. All right. Now we are probably looking at 3%. Now, what does it mean if you are taking a 1 million loan? For easier calculation, if your loan was 1 million, you've taken a 30 years loan, if effective mortgage rate was 4.25%, it will mean that you would have to pay 4,919 in your monthly installment. But if your loan amount was 1 million for 30 years, but if the interest rate has reduced to 3%, okay, based on flexi rate, okay, your installment amount would now reduce substantially to 4,002. Can you see the big difference? Okay. Now, low interest rate constitute lower installment. I think everyone knows about that. But the second things I want to point out to you is that not many people are aware. Look at this one. If the interest rate was at 4.25, paying 700 ringgit more a month for 5 years. Pay more, 5 years later, your outstanding balance is actually more. So the chart on my left, you highlighted, is actually when the interest rate was 4.25% and you're paying 4,009. Your outstanding balance represent the outstanding balance, which is 889,000. It means that if you pay lesser, your outstanding balance is actually also lesser 5 years later. So, in other words, with a lower mortgage rate from 4.25% to 3% now, first of all, you enjoy about 14% lower in installment based on 30 years loan. Second thing, even you pay lesser, your outstanding loan amount is actually lesser. In this case, lesser by about 20,000. Okay? So how many of us realize that? So if you buy a property during low interest rate environment, okay, let's say you charge it for 5 years, not only you enjoy 14% lower in an installment, okay, but you also have lower outstanding loan amount. That is a beauty if you buy a property using banking facility. Now, if you charge it the 1 million loan using 3%, I know mortgage rate would not remain low for the next 30 years. I'm just using this as illustration purpose to give you a concept what we call time value of money. Okay, now based on 1 million loan you take at the interest rate of 3%, let's say you charge it for 30 years. The total principal and interest you pay would be amounted to 1.5 million, thereabout, okay, 1.5 million. Now, you take 1 million loan, the low interest rate, you actually only pay about 50% extra in the interest, okay? Of course, using 3% low interest rate. Now, let's say you chuck it aside. I just want to illustrate the time value of money here. If the future value of 30 years later is 1.5 million, assuming the inflation rate is 5%, we work backwards, right? Okay, the present value would be only 350,000. Okay, so in short, 1.5 million worth 30 years later, if the inflation was 5% constant every year, the 1.5 million is actually worth 350,000 in today's present value. Okay, now what actually brings up a very important point? A lot of times we are talking about inflation. Buying property is actually a good way to hedge against inflation. Okay, when the currency value drop, when the inflations come in, and this will be exaggerated when the central bank is printing more money, especially now. So the pace of inflation is increasing. More compelling reason to buy a property because the price going up. We always understand the first part, but also at the same time, when you take a loan, your loan amount is fixed. Your loan amount is fixed in dollar and cents. So in other words, the real value of your loan, which is your principal but interest paid over the next 20, 30 years, the actual value actually reduce. I give you one example, okay? A true example. One of my friend who bought a double-story house in Sri Petaling. I think everybody knows Sri Petaling, okay. 30 years ago, he paid 126,000 for the house. And he has been diligently paying 700 ringgit for his installment. Okay? from 30 years ago until now. He's never done anything to alter it. He's never take refinancing, never pay a big amount to reduce. He's just diligent every month, paying about 700 plus ringgit as an installment. 1 year ago, he finished paying his loan. He told me his personal thing. He said that at that time, the house was 126,000. He took a loan. Paying 700 ringgit at that time is like a huge burden. But today, the house was worth about 800,000 at today's value. He's paying still 700 ringgit plus for a house that's worth 800,000. Of course, he was jokingly saying that if I would knew it, he would have bought more than 2 houses. He would have bought more than 2 houses, because if he bought 2 houses, 1,004 ringgit is still meant nothing to him at today's value. So sometimes we have to understand, a lot of times when we actually projected our installment for a house, our incomes is probably at the lowest time of our life, because by natural progressions, our income level goes up as the times go by. But at the same time, if you look at how inflation works in, the installment amount value, especially the last one, will also mean that the real value comes down significantly. Okay, that's the beauty part of taking a loan to buy a property. You actually have benefit from 2 ways: increase in property value due to inflation, and also the real value of your total loan amount paid over the next course of 20-30 years is actually reduced substantially. Okay. Now, the other point I want to share with you is that people always say the minority control the majority wealth in the world, which is true. And the fact that the rich get richer, especially during crisis, is proven to be true, crisis after crisis. Now, I want to show you one thing that is a well-known fact. It's no longer a secret that minority people controlling the majority of wealth in the world. Now, just by how much, I think the chart will spell out very clearly. 1.1% of the world population controlling about 46% of wealth, and 11.1% controlling about 39.1%. So we just look at rough figures, 11.2% of the world population is already controlling close to 85% of the wealth in the world. 12% people controlling 85% of the wealth in the world. So in other words, if there's a crisis coming in, especially now, when actually there's quantitative easing measurement, means the money is flowing to the market substantially. Just imagine how much of the money will eventually flow to the normal average household. How much of the money that is being pumped up from the quantitative easing will be actually flowing to the giant company, the wealthiest people in the world. Think Amazon, think Alibaba, think Grab, this big company. How many of us during the lockdown, or when we actually have some money giving out by the government, whether it's by the way of aid or by the way of loan or whatsoever, how many of the money coming to our account eventually flow out again, because we use services like Amazon, Alibaba, Shopee, Grab, Samsung, iPhone, Netflix. Okay, so in other words, these gigantic companies have tentacles in every aspect of social and economic setup. More money flowing to the market will only means more money flowing to the bank accounts. Now, this is not what I say. This is actually published in articles. You can see during quantitative easing in COVID-19, how the rich got richer. It's long articles. Okay, if you're interested, you can actually look through this in your Googles. But I just want to pinpoint, according to Bank of England, okay, the vast amount of money pumped into the economy via quantitative easing has found its way to the hand of the wealthiest 5% in Britain. All right, this study is done in Britain. Do you think this figure will be varies a lot if you plug into other countries? I don't think so. Okay. And what they tell you that when purchasing bond, the price of asset such as property and shares is pushed upwards. Okay. So in other words, what the wealthy people are doing during the crisis time is an open secret here. Now, actually, there's a great saying: in every crisis lies an opportunity. It makes more sense. It actually has more greater impacts for the richer, because every crisis come is an opportunity for them to double up, triple up their wealth. Okay, crisis come. The type of quantitative easing come is the worldwide wave. The question you want to ask: do you fight against the tide or do you fight along it? For those who understand Mandarin or can read Mandarin, you always have this word 时势造英雄，英雄造时势. It's always easier, okay? 永远都比较容易，时势造英雄是很容易，英雄造时势是很难. Okay? So, we might not be the wealthy 1% or the wealthy 10% in the world, but if you have opportunity, if you have capacity to follow the footsteps of these wealthy people by converting currency into fixed asset like property, I think this actually open a very well-guided footstep for us to improve our financial condition and increase our wealth as well. Okay. I mentioned to you about building material costs, right? A lot of people say that one of the best way to illustrate inflation is how much one wanton will cost 20 years ago, 10 years ago, and how much would it cost now, and how much will it cost in the future. All right, that's one way to look at inflation. But there is a new way it's happening in today's world we call shrinkflation. Shrink plus inflation. Okay, this picture paints 1,000 words. Okay. In January 2020, which is not too long ago, 1.5 years ago, 1,000 would get you this amount of building material wise, all right? In June 2021, the 1,000 will only give you this. So you spend the same amount of money, but in return, what you get is substantially lesser. If you plug into property now, okay, using not just inflation, I'm talking about shrinkflation. Shrinkflation is a new term that means that still you pay the same amount of money. It's not you're paying a lot more, but you still pay the same amount of money. But how much will you get in return? The value will be substantially lesser. In 2020, 1 million may give you 1,000 square feet in 1 carat. But because of inflation, which leads to shrinkflation, how much 1 million can get you? 550, 600, or 450 square feet in the same area. Okay, this is how much inflation will actually impact you. It's either you have to increase the money that you spend, or you're getting substantially lower in value but the same amount of spending. Okay, so this is a topic we can't run away. We are all still in pandemic crisis now. The question we ask: where do we move forwards from now? At the moment, to be honest, all eyes are on one country, and the country is called United Kingdom. And why? First of all, UK, the Prime Minister took a very, very bold, aggressive move. Okay, some of you, many of us actually have witnessed Euro Cup last month. When you see people cheer, with people, the audience is there. You can see the vast difference between Euro Cup and Olympic. Olympic in Tokyo, no live audience. But you look at Euro Cup in UK, full. All right, people actually fight to get into the stadium. People celebrate. People watch the game at the pub area. And after 19th of July, they actually take out the compulsory rule for people to have close gathering. They actually take out the compulsory for people to wear masks. In other words, all business sector resume normal, and there's no SOP of wearing masks, close distance, and the pub cannot open. All is back to normal. And to be the other things to take note of is actually the Delta variant, the scary words for COVID now. Actually, more than 90% of UK cases are actually Delta variants. Now, I want to put things in perspective. And when you have countries that most of the cases are Delta variant, scary enough, and then you don't practice compulsory SOP, you open club, nightclub, pub, restaurant, sports event, school, full force, back to business. We would thought that is a suicide move, all right? But what gives the Prime Minister of UK this kind of courage? There's none other than one thing. It's called vaccination. Okay, let's show the figures. On 20th of July, their past 7 days, their cases are 46,000. Their average 7 days is 46,878. Okay, that's prior to fully open up. But when they fully open up 10 days later, their cases actually dropped 25,000. Okay, one of the reasons people say because end of Euro Cup, people don't come out so much for gathering. This could be one of the reasons. The other reason is also because of the high vaccination rate. Now, take a look at this. England, we have 70% people who receive at least one dose. All right, 57% actually receive 2 dosage of the vaccination. So in other words, they actually, although we no longer use the word, we are not advised to use the word called herd immunity, but I think this is a concept already implanted. It means that the more people vaccinated to reach a certain threshold, we should live a normal life. And how far we are, Malaysia, take a look at Malaysia versus UK, 42%, 20%, we're still substantially lower, but we are moving very quickly, okay? So there's one of the way to actually bring our life back to normal. Many negative sentiments is created when we see the news today. But a lot of times the news reported is about past history or even the current situation we are in. What we really can look for now is actually the high vaccination rate that will be able to bring us out of the mess, that will be able to bring us and lead us back to the normal daily life. And just to share, this is the latest news come out a few days ago on the 2nd of August. More than 95% adults in KL, Selangor has at least given the first dose. So what it means that it actually provides a certain protection against the COVID, but at the same time, it gives the flexibility of the government to open up economic sector and revive the economic activities. Therefore, you bring us back to the normal track. So these are the few things I want to share with you. Okay, so if you are thinking about whether to buy or not to buy a property during pandemic, I hope some of the information, some of the slides I share with you can provide some of the insight. Of course, if you're interested, you can Google further on this lah. Okay, so I'm just going to pull out my sharing, and I am just going to go back to the session now. All right, so with this, I'm going to conclude my session for today. Thank you very much. I hope to see you guys again very soon. Now stay safe, and bye bye. Take care, everyone.